They say retirement is about finally enjoying the peace you've earned. Well, I found mine hiding behind a Victoria's Secret bag stuffed under a box of Christmas lights in July. And yes, the angels were in there, but not the ones that play harps. I wasn't looking for anything that day. I was just in the garage trying to find the damn grill brush when I noticed Karen's travel tote wedged into a storage bin labeled Old Tax Returns. Strange, I thought. She hates clutter and wouldn't be caught dead keeping anything unrelated to deductions in that bin. Curiosity is a hell of a drug when you've got nothing else to do but watch retirement roll by. So I opened it, expecting maybe a forgotten passport or a moldy airline snack. What I found was a cheap burner phone, still powered on, stashed between two old bridal magazines from the early 2000s, the one she insisted we keep for sentimental reasons. The phone was unlocked. Either she thought I was too stupid to find it, or she wanted me to. I picked it up with the same casual detachment I'd use for a dead rat in the attic. Necessary disgust, but no emotion. The screen was open to a thread of messages from someone saved under the name Marina Supply. That was cute. Real subtle. Miss you already. Can't believe how fast you left this morning. Still smells like you in the car, one message read. Another said, he suspects nothing. He's too old school to even look. I didn't react. I just stood there, reading every single message like I was reviewing inventory on a supply ship. One item at a time, cross-checking, calculating. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't race. There was no rage, no panic. Just a cold click in my head, like a gear locking into place. That's when I knew Karen wasn't just lying to me. She was actively insulting my intelligence while building a soft landing for herself somewhere else. For years, I gave her what most men never could: stability, patience, and silence. I gave her silence because I believed in letting people reveal themselves without pressure. And she did. Oh, she did beautifully. That afternoon, she came home like she always did after her planning sessions, perfume a little too fresh, smile a little too tight. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted to order Thai. I said sure, cashew chicken like always. She didn't notice that I didn't kiss her back. Didn't notice that I didn't ask how her day went. She was already somewhere else, in his car, in his arms, in his future. I knew better than to confront her. That's what amateurs do. You don't tip your hand when the other player hasn't seen your cards yet. And me? I've played my share of poker, both at sea and in boardrooms. I know the value of watching someone bluff themselves into disaster. Over the next few days, I began to make small changes, nothing big enough to trigger suspicion. I moved some files. I redirected mail. I opened a separate checking account. She thought I was working on a new consulting gig, probably planning her exit right down to the date. But I wasn't preparing to leave. I was preparing to let her fall. She had no idea that I knew everything. That I'd seen the texts. That I knew his name. Knew the hotel. Knew about the little bank withdrawals she made each time she claimed she needed gas money. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something colder, like steel that had been forged and cooled so many times it no longer remembered the heat. I went into our shared online bank account that night and downloaded every transaction from the past 2 years. I noticed a pattern: always $300, always on Thursdays, always cash. It was the kind of mistake you make when you think the other person stopped paying attention. I didn't stop paying attention. I just never let on that I started. That's the difference. That's why she was never going to see it coming. It wasn't that Karen stopped loving me all at once. No, it was more like watching a slow leak in a boat you thought was seaworthy. The kind of leak that doesn't make a splash but sinks you just the same. At first, it was the small things, the things you can excuse when you've been married for almost 3 decades. She stopped watching the evening news with me. We always had that routine: dinner, dishes, the news, then she'd fall asleep halfway through a rerun of MASH asterisk while I rubbed her feet. But now she said the news was too negative and started going for walks instead. Hour-long walks with her phone clutched tightly in her hand and her location sharing mysteriously turned off. I'd ask how the walk was and she'd say things like, it was good to just be with my thoughts, like I'd been some kind of fog she needed to escape from. Then there were the yoga classes. She'd never liked yoga, called it stretching for people who don't like cardio, but suddenly she was going 3 times a week and wearing leggings I hadn't seen before, tight ones, expensive ones. She said it made her feel centered, but I noticed she'd come home with her hair done and smelling like hotel lobby soap. I remember one night she came home humming, set her keys on the counter, and said, "Raylene and I had the most amazing chai lattes after class." I nodded. Then I saw Raylene 2 days later at the grocery store and mentioned it. She looked confused and said she hadn't seen Karen in weeks. My stomach didn't drop. My blood didn't boil. I just filed it away, one more inconsistency in a growing list of curated lies. She started saying things like, I need space to grow, and we've always been a team, but I need to focus on me now. She said it with this almost condescending kindness, like I was a confused child holding on to her ankle while she was trying to walk into her destiny. She began sleeping with earbuds in, said it helped her relax. I'd wake up and see the soft blue light of her phone glowing against her cheek as she smiled at something she'd never share with me. Her laughter shifted. It used to be spontaneous, full-throated, part of our shared rhythm. Now it came in short, clipped bursts that stopped the moment I walked into the room. She changed her phone background from a photo of us in Acadia to a quote about reclaiming your energy. I asked if she was okay, and she said, You're so sweet for asking, but I'm just doing some internal work. That was the phrase, internal work, like I was some external problem she had to manage. Then she started going to planning meetings for her event clients, even though I knew damn well most of her business was word of mouth and done by email. She'd wear outfits that didn't match the event descriptions, tight skirts, open blouses, heels she'd once called ankle suicide. I remember walking into the kitchen one day and seeing a leather wallet on the counter I'd never seen before. I picked it up, and inside was a parking validation for a downtown hotel she claimed she never went near because the valet smelled like weed. I set it back exactly where I found it. When I asked how her meeting went, she smiled and said, Oh, it got canceled last minute, so I just took some me time. I nodded. I smiled. I said I was glad she got a break. Because I still wanted to believe that we were okay, that this was a phase, a fog, a strange weather pattern we'd get through. I didn't want to be one of those bitter men who suspects everything and ends up chasing shadows. I didn't want to think the woman who once cried watching me fix the fence in the rain would now lie to my face and plan her next life behind my back. But then she made her Instagram private. We used to sit together and scroll through photos of our nieces and college friends and share memories. Now, her account said, This profile is private, when I clicked it from my phone. When I asked why, she said it was for personal branding, which didn't make any sense since she wasn't selling anything. Still, I nodded. I said I understood. I didn't. I was starting to feel like a guest in my own home, a placeholder in her carefully constructed narrative of self-evolution. Even our dinners changed. She used to cook with warmth, taste-testing sauces with her finger and smiling when I stole a bite. Now everything came prepackaged, and she said she was on a cleanse that I somehow wasn't invited to join. She started buying expensive candles with names like Rebirth and Sacred Ash and lighting them during her evening reflection time. I stayed in the den with the TV turned low, pretending not to notice the locked bedroom door. The worst part? She still kissed me goodbye some mornings. Still told me she loved me. But the words had no grip, no anchor. They floated in the air like smoke from those damn candles. That was when I knew the life we had wasn't ours anymore. It was hers, and I was only allowed to witness it from a distance. It was a Tuesday afternoon, nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, just another mundane day smeared with dishonesty. I was in the study balancing some tax estimates for the quarter when Karen's laptop, which she left open on the kitchen counter, pinged with a calendar notification. She usually kept it closed, password protected, obsessively private, like it contained nuclear codes. But this time it was wide open, recklessly so, and the screen flashed an event reminder titled, Lunch with M at the Nest, 2:30 p.m. The Nest is a rustic little bistro about 25 minutes out of town, quiet, expensive, and surrounded by trees, good for privacy, even better for secrets. I stared at that screen for exactly 3 seconds. No more, no less. I didn't hesitate. I opened the calendar, checked the recurring pattern. This lunch with M had happened every second Tuesday for the past 6 months. All marked with subtle variations, meeting, in, Nest catch-up, check-in with them. Not business codes. Not client tags. They were love notes in disguise. I didn't touch her messages. Didn't need to. I'd seen enough. I walked to the garage, grabbed my car keys, and drove out with the calm of a man going to buy milk. No sweat. No tension. Just gears turning. I parked 3 rows down from the Nest, slipped on sunglasses, and waited. At 2:27, she pulled in. I watched her get out of the car, hair perfect, lips just glossed, perfume trailing her like she was headed to a photo shoot. She wore a dress I'd seen once before, tied in the hips, floral in a way she claimed was too young for her when I complimented it last spring. Apparently, it wasn't too young for today. I stayed in the car and leaned back just far enough to stay hidden behind the rear view. At 2:31, a man walked out of the restaurant and greeted her with a kiss, not on the cheek, not brotherly, not polite, full on the mouth, hand on her waist, the kind of kiss that writes its own alibi. He looked 10 years younger than me, maybe 5 years younger than her, with the face of a man who'd never built anything long enough to know what it cost. I recognized him. Not personally, but I'd seen him before in a photo from the yacht club gala last winter. Karen had shown it to me offhandedly, calling him some new donor she couldn't remember the name of. I remember because she laughed when I said he looked like the kind of man who lies about his golf handicap. They didn't go into the restaurant. They walked around the back path, into the woods where there were picnic tables, out of sight. That's when I knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't excitement or risk or curiosity. This was routine. Scheduled. Practiced. Choreographed. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how unremarkable she made it seem, how ordinary her deception had become. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I didn't even blink. I just sat there and watched the car she used our joint account to finance get smaller in my rearview mirror as the gears in my head started shifting into something far more dangerous than rage. There's a moment when disbelief stops protecting you, when the mask peels off and the full ugliness of reality presses into your chest like a blade. I felt it then, felt every lie, every misdirection, every touch that wasn't mine pile up into a single, brutal clarity. And it didn't break me. It focused me. Because now I knew I wasn't dealing with a wife struggling through confusion or chasing some midlife crisis with crystals and journaling. I was dealing with a practiced liar who had rehearsed every detail of her double life down to the lunch reservations. She never once suspected I'd follow. Never thought I'd look. Because to her, I was predictable, stable, background noise. Her safety net while she trapezed across someone else's fantasy. But here's the thing about men like me. We don't panic when the ship starts leaking. We skin the hull. We plot the coordinates. We decide who's getting left behind. And in that moment, sitting in my car with the AC on low and the soft hum of silence around me, I made that decision. She just didn't know it yet. I became a ghost in my own house, not the kind that rattles chains or wails through hallways, but the kind that moves silently, watches everything, and leaves no trace. Karen still smiled at me in the mornings, still poured my coffee and asked if I needed anything from the store. But now, I didn't drink the coffee until she left. I didn't ask for anything. I just smiled back, told her she looked great, and watched how her eyes flicked away too quickly, like someone hiding a tell at a poker table. My first move was subtle. I waited until she left for one of her planning retreats and checked the mileage on her car. Then I reset the trip meter. When she returned 3 days later, she claimed she'd stayed at the Shiloh Springs Inn, exactly 42 miles away. But the odometer read 238 miles round trip. I didn't confront her. I said, hope the drive was relaxing. She smiled, said, it really was, and walked away with the confidence of someone who believed the cover story was airtight. Next, I took our financial records and printed them, old school, physical copies, line by line. I highlighted every gas station purchase, every unexplained ATM withdrawal, every midweek expense tagged under miscellaneous. There was a pattern. Always Thursdays. Always between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Always paired with a $12 charge from a place called Redfern Coffee. I Googled it. It's a tiny cafe on the edge of town with exactly 4 outdoor tables and no indoor seating, quiet, low traffic, perfect for stolen time. I drove there the next Thursday, sat across the street in my car, and waited. Sure enough, at 11:42 a.m., her car pulled in. She sat at a table with him. Same man. Same arrogant smirk. This time, she wore sunglasses and kept checking her phone like she was on the run. They didn't touch, not physically. But the way they leaned toward each other, the way she laughed, God, the laughter again, it was all there. When she got home, I asked how Raylene's baby shower planning was going. She said, oh, we got so much done today. I think it's going to be really special. I said, she's lucky to have you, and watched her blink just a little too long. She was improvising now, relying on instinct, and she had no idea I'd already moved 5 steps ahead. I used an old tablet we hadn't touched in years, one still synced to her Apple ID. She must have forgotten. It started feeding me her calendar updates, voice memos, and best of all, location pings. Not exact addresses, but enough to create a breadcrumb trail of deception. One day, I tested her. She told me she'd be at the salon all morning. I said, text me when you get there. I need to know how long I've got with the plumber. She smiled, nodded, and left. 10 minutes later, her location showed she was at a gas station near the interstate. 30 minutes later, she was parked at a strip of office buildings I'd never seen before. I took a drive. I didn't approach. I just noted the address. 2 doors down was a company called Shoreline Consulting. I looked it up. Guess who was listed as their newest project advisor? Him. Mr. Yacht Club smirk. Later that week, I made a second move. I called Shoreline, posed as a freelance recruiter, and asked if Mark Whitaker was still accepting contract work. The woman on the line said, yes, but he's often off-site on Thursdays and some Tuesdays. His partner handles most of the on-site stuff those days. Partner. Interesting word choice. The next day, I created a fake event under Karen's business email, a catering quote request for a fake engagement party, urgent timeline, big budget. I used a name she didn't recognize and listed the reply email as one I controlled. She responded within an hour, saying she was fully booked those weekends, but could possibly refer a trusted colleague. I said I'd appreciate that. The next day, she forwarded me a recommendation for a woman named Lila, who turned out to be Mark's ex-wife. I checked the referral email headers. It came from Mark's personal domain. That's when I realized they weren't just sneaking around. They were building a network, one that looped in mutual acquaintances, clients, maybe even family. I checked our credit card statement again and noticed 2 charges at a boutique in town I hadn't visited in years. One was for a men's watch. The other, a cologne I'd never worn. I went to the boutique and asked the clerk if I could see the last receipt under Karen's name. She said, sure, your wife said it was a birthday gift for someone special. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out with a receipt that proved what I already knew. She wasn't cheating on me. She was replacing me. Slowly, deliberately, building a second life like a model house, perfectly staged, ready to occupy, just waiting for me to get out of the way. But here's the thing. I wasn't going to get out of the way. I was going to pull the foundation out from under it. She just hadn't felt the cracks yet. She thought it was a business dinner. That's what I told her. A new client wanted to meet us both, something high-end, at the rooftop lounge in the city, very exclusive. I booked the table, the wine, even arranged for a small private booth facing the skyline. Everything just the way she liked it. She showed up wearing that emerald green dress she only wore when she needed to impress. The one I told her once made her look like a woman who knew exactly what she wanted, and she did. She kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, like this wasn't the beginning of the end, and sat across from me, legs crossed, smile perfect. I poured her wine, asked how her day had been, and she said it was a whirlwind, her go-to phrase when she didn't want to get specific. I nodded, pretending I hadn't already downloaded every one of her emails and read every calendar reminder. I waited until the waiter left. Then I reached into my jacket and set a simple brown envelope on the table. She stared at it, blinking like someone trying to remember if they'd left the stove on. What's this? She asked, still smiling. I said nothing. She opened it and saw the photos, her and Mark, holding hands outside the nest, kissing beside his truck, sitting too close at the lake house he claimed was his sister's. The color drained from her face like ink and water. This isn't what it looks like, she said automatically, a reflex honed through 100 rehearsals. I tilted my head and replied, good. Then tell me what it is. She swallowed, licked her lips, looked down, then said, we were just reconnecting. He needed someone to talk to. It wasn't serious. I let the silence stretch between us until it was almost unbearable, then said, you lied to me every Thursday for 6 months, emptied our savings to finance your hotel meetups, and told your friends I was suffocating you. What part of that sounds like not serious? Her jaw clenched. She looked around, as if the room might offer an escape, then leaned in, voice low, defensive now. You never listened. You just existed. I needed something more, something real. I didn't want to hurt you. I sipped my wine and said, but you did. Repeatedly. With intention. She shifted, tried to regroup, then said, you're not perfect either. You're always so cold, so distant. I felt invisible. I didn't blink. Invisible people don't cook dinner. Invisible people don't wash your car when it's cold outside or remember your sister's birthday when you forget. You weren't invisible. You were ungrateful. She laughed once, sharp, hollow, defiant. So what now? You think this makes you the victim? What? You want me to cry and beg for forgiveness? You think this makes you strong? I leaned forward, voice calm, steady. No. Strength would have been walking away before turning our marriage into a stage play. Strength would have been honesty. What you did wasn't strength, it was cowardice in high heels. That shut her up. For a moment, she just stared at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize. The silence wasn't awkward, it was surgical. Then her voice dropped. What do you want from me, Martin? The fear was creeping in now, slowly, beneath the cracks of her polished facade. Nothing, I said. I just wanted you to see what it looks like when the truth walks in wearing a suit. She blinked fast, looked down at the photos again, and asked, Are you going to tell anyone? I said, I don't have to. You'll do that yourself soon enough. She looked up, wide-eyed. What does that mean? I leaned back and folded my hands. You'll find out. That's the beauty of truth. It doesn't need help to destroy illusions. She tried to speak, but no words came. Her face was pale now, fingers trembling slightly as she touched the stem of her wine glass. For the first time since this all began, she wasn't in control of the story, and she knew it. I didn't stand. I didn't storm off. I just sat there, watching her unravel one breath at a time, the weight of her choices pressing into the space between us like fog. The air hung heavy with everything unspoken, and I let it. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. She came home the next morning like a woman walking into her own execution, trying to wear confidence like armor but tripping over the cracks in her own voice. I was sitting in the kitchen, calm, flipping through the paper, coffee in hand like it was any other Thursday. She dropped her purse too hard on the counter and said, You ambushed me. I turned the page. She kept going. That wasn't fair, Martin. You set me up. You made me look like a monster. I folded the paper neatly and said, You didn't need my help for that. Her lips tightened, shoulders rising, the way they always did when she felt cornered. I made a mistake, okay? People make mistakes. God, haven't you ever made one? I met her eyes and said, Not for 6 months straight. Not while looking my partner in the face every day and telling lies with a straight smile. She laughed, dry, humorless, defensive. Oh, so now you're perfect? Is that it? The noble husband who never did anything wrong? Please. You were half asleep in this marriage for years. I sipped my coffee. I wasn't asleep. I was trusting you. She paused, flinched a little. Then the venom came. You smothered me. You were always there, always needing something, acting like I owed you my time. You made me feel like a prisoner in my own life. I nodded once. And so you escaped by climbing into someone else's bed. Logical. That shook her, only slightly, but enough to see it. She turned her back, paced once, then spun around and said, You were boring, Martin. Everything in this house was routine, mechanical, dead. You talk about truth like it's some sacred thing, but you didn't see me. You didn't feel me. I stood then, slowly, calmly, walked past her and said, I didn't see you because you were performing. And I didn't feel you because there was nothing left of you to feel. You hollowed yourself out to be wanted by someone who couldn't spell integrity if it slapped him. She slammed her hand on the counter. Don't talk to me like I'm beneath you. You think just because you kept quiet and wore that damn mask every day you're better than me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, I didn't wear a mask. I wore the truth. You just didn't recognize it anymore. Her face twisted into something I didn't recognize, something feral. You're not a man. A real man would have fought for me. A real man would have chased me down when I started slipping. But you just sat there like a stone. I let that one hang in the air before replying, You don't chase a drowning person who jumps willingly. You let them sink. That broke something in her. She stepped back, eyes wide, lips parted like she wanted to scream but didn't know the words. Then came the pivot. I'm scared, Martin. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think I'd lose everything. Can we fix this? I looked at her with a stillness that made the air feel colder. There is no we. You broke it with your own hands, and now you want me to glue the pieces together so you don't feel guilty? She shook her head, tears brimming now, voice trembling. Please. We've built a life. We have memories. We've made it through worse. I stepped forward, leaned close enough for her to feel the finality in my breath. This wasn't a storm we weathered together. This was arson. And you lit the match while I was still holding the map. She sobbed once, covered her mouth, turned away, and whispered, I didn't mean to hurt you. I straightened my cuffs and replied, But you did. And meaning doesn't erase the damage. It just makes you the architect of your own ruin. She collapsed into the bar stool, shaking, clutching her phone like it might call back the life she just watched slip through her fingers. I picked up my keys from the table, paused at the door, and looked back one last time. Her face was a storm of desperation and disbelief, the realization blooming in her chest like slow poison. She hadn't just lost control. She'd lost me. Not because I screamed, or begged, or raged, but because I stopped caring. And that, she knew, was a sentence far heavier than any punishment I could speak aloud. Revenge isn't rage. Rage is sloppy. Rage leaves fingerprints. Real revenge is slow, cold, and silent. It feels like time itself turning against you. The morning after her breakdown, I made coffee like usual, but instead of drinking it, I sat down and opened my laptop. Step 1 was digital. I compiled everything, every screenshot, every GPS ping, every photo, every receipt, every voice memo from her cloud backup. I created a secure folder, encrypted it, and backed it up twice, once on an external drive stored in my safety deposit box, and once under a decoy file name buried in a dummy email account. Step 2 was financial. I'd already separated my consulting income months earlier under the guise of simplifying taxes. Now I froze access to the joint savings account. One call to the bank, a few keywords, and her card stopped working the next time she tried to buy gas. I moved half of the remaining liquid funds into a new trust under my name only. The house? It was mine. Bought it with my inheritance before we married. I let her decorate it, let her believe her name gave her some stake in it, but it never did. A quiet title search confirmed that. She could scream about emotional investment all she wanted, the deed wouldn't care. I arranged for the utilities to be transferred out of her name entirely. Phone plan? Gone. Insurance? Moved. Her car? Technically mine too, registered under my LLC for tax purposes. I filed for its repossession the next week. She'd wake up one morning, and it just wouldn't be in the driveway anymore. Step 3 was personal. I printed a curated packet, not all the dirt, just enough. A tasteful collection of her affairs timeline, expense history, and lies, nothing vulgar, just surgical. I mailed one to her parents, one to her sister, one to her best friend. No note, no explanation, just the truth, like a mirror shoved in her face. I didn't need to comment. They'd draw their own conclusions. Her social life would unravel itself without my help. I gave a copy to our pastor too, during a quiet handshake after service. No words exchanged, just eye contact and a nod. He's a perceptive man. He understood. Step 4 was legal. I met with my lawyer, a woman I trust because she's sharper than anyone Karen ever underestimated. We filed divorce papers that same day, sealed and ready to serve. The terms? Brutal but fair. No alimony. No split of premarital assets. We cited infidelity, presented our documentation, and filed under a clause that would freeze any attempt on her part to liquidate shared funds. We also added a condition. Any attempt at retaliation would be met with full public release of her communications, carefully redacted to protect others but damning in tone. A legal leash around her neck, and she wouldn't even feel it until she tried to bite. Step 5 was social. I sent one polite email to her HR department, posing as a concerned external party, with questions about their workplace ethics policies regarding employee relationships with external vendors. I included no names. I didn't need to. Her lover's name and her company appeared together on multiple invoices, all public record. Her boss would do the rest. Companies don't like the whiff of impropriety, especially in HR. She would be let go, under the guise of restructuring, clean, professional, irreversible. Finally, I scheduled a weekend trip. Somewhere quiet. Remote. No service. I left a note on the fridge, taking some time to breathe. All legal communication will come through counsel. Please don't contact me directly. I signed it with my full name, not Marty, not Love You Always, not even M. Just Martin Langford. The kind of name you put on a headstone or a war memorial. When she came home to find her keys didn't work, the fridge was empty, her name scrubbed from every account, and her inbox full of silence and polite deflections, she'd understand. This wasn't a fight. It was a verdict. She wasn't being punished. She was being removed, efficiently, permanently, with the same cold precision she once used to erase me from her life while I was still sleeping beside her. Only difference was, I didn't flinch. I didn't hide. I just turned the system she built into the knife she'd fall on. And the best part? She still thought she had time. Thought she could cry, explain, manipulate, rebuild. She didn't realize the door had already closed. All that was left was the sound of her own footsteps, echoing through a life collapsing inward like a house with no foundation. It happened at her niece's engagement party, of all places, an elegant little garden affair full of string lights, champagne flutes, and people pretending their lives were as clean as their linen shirts. She hadn't seen me when I arrived. I stood near the back fence with her brother, Dan, who'd gotten a copy of the packet 2 days earlier. His eyes told me everything. He'd read it, verified it, and now looked at his sister with the kind of expression usually reserved for strangers who've stolen from your home. Karen walked in 15 minutes later wearing a pale yellow dress, and that rehearsed laugh she used when she wanted to appear effortless. She kissed everyone on the cheek, handed the bride to be a wrapped gift, and acted like nothing in the world could touch her. The woman had always been a performer, but tonight the mask was thick, trembling at the edges. I didn't say a word. I didn't wave. I just stood where she would eventually notice me. And then she did. Her eyes caught mine halfway through a conversation with her cousin. I watched her freeze mid-sentence, just long enough for the air around her to tighten. She smiled too quickly and said something to excuse herself, walking toward me with a mix of disbelief and damage control already brimming in her expression. "Martin," she said, almost a whisper, "what are you doing here?" I looked around and replied, "Celebrating family. Isn't that what this is?" Her smile twitched, faltered. "You didn't RSVP. "Didn't need to," I said. "I was invited." She looked past me then, toward Dan, who didn't look away. Neither did her sister, who stood beside their mother with a drink untouched in her hand, staring at Karen like she was a shadow cast in daylight. That was when Karen's phone buzzed. Once. Twice. A third time. She checked it, and I watched her lips part, her brow crease, her breath catch as she read the messages. From Raylene. From her boss. From someone named Marcy who used to call her soul sister. It was happening in real time, every shield she'd ever crafted cracking under the weight of exposure. I had timed it perfectly. Everyone who mattered knew. Everyone who'd once praised her grace, her charm, her balanced aura, now had her betrayal in high-res screenshots and receipts. And I didn't need to shout it from a podium, I just let the truth speak. I saw her eyes scan the crowd, trying to locate who else knew. Everyone, Karen. They all know. She tried to laugh, even cracked a joke to a friend passing by, but the friend barely nodded and kept walking. Her confidence began to collapse like wet plaster, soft, sagging, desperate to hold shape. Then came the final cut. Mark arrived. Alone. She brightened for a split second, like maybe he could rescue her image, provide an alibi, reaffirm the fantasy. But he walked past her like she didn't exist, straight to the host, shook hands, dropped a card in the gift box, and left. Not a word. Not a glance. She called his name once, quiet and confused, like a child asking a parent not to leave the room. He didn't stop. Her world had just flinched away from her, and she still didn't know where to place the blame. She turned to me, eyes wide, voice trembling. "You did this." I nodded slowly. "No, you did this. I just stopped hiding it for you." She swallowed hard, lips quivering now, mascara cracking at the edges of her eyelids. "You were supposed to love me through this." I said nothing, because even she didn't believe that line anymore. Her mother walked by then, clutching a napkin in her hand. She paused, looked at her daughter, and said, quietly but clearly, "How could you?" Then walked away without waiting for an answer. Karen stood there, shoulders rigid, breath shallow, trembling in her perfect dress under the perfect lights, surrounded by a silence thicker than any scream. No one comforted her. No one stepped forward. She looked around like a woman drowning in the middle of a crowded beach, and no one even turned their head. And me? I stayed. I watched. I didn't flinch, didn't smirk, didn't revel. I was just there, solid, calm, unmoved. Because justice doesn't need applause. It just needs to land. And that night, it landed like thunder in a room full of porcelain masks. It exploded at her parents' anniversary dinner, a backyard event they'd planned for months, filled with fairy lights, a rented string quartet, catered finger food, and about 40 guests who all still believed the Langfords were a stable, respectable couple. I hadn't planned to say anything. I showed up out of courtesy, out of a promise I made to her father long before any of this unraveled. I stood near the grill, talking with her uncle about retirement funds, when I heard her voice rise across the yard, sharp, forced laughter aimed at a group of friends she hadn't seen since college. She was performing again, smiling like her world hadn't just imploded a week ago. I watched her touch the arm of one of her old coworkers, laugh too loud, pivot like nothing mattered. Then I heard her mention my name, just a passing jab, something light, like Martin always was too serious for these kinds of things. The group chuckled. My jaw clenched. Her sister glanced over at me, eyes wide, and I nodded. That was the match to the gasoline. I walked up to the group and said, loud enough for every fork and glass to stop moving, "You're right, Karen. I am serious. Serious enough to not cheat on my spouse for half a year with a man who dumped you like garbage once the truth came out." The silence cracked. Her friends froze. Her mother gasped, hand on her chest. Karen's eyes bulged like I just slapped her in front of a church choir. "Martin, don't do this here," she said, trying to laugh it off, trying to recover. I stepped closer. "Why not? You had no problem doing everything else in plain sight. The lies. The sneaking around. The stealing." She snapped, voice rising. "I didn't steal anything." Her father stepped forward, eyebrows raised. "You emptied our savings for hotel rooms, Karen," I said, turning to the guests. "Every Thursday. For 6 months. With a man she told her friends was her mentor." Gasps. A few murmurs. Raylene's eyes widened. One of the coworkers stepped back like Karen had just sprouted horns. "You're making this ugly," Karen hissed. "This was private." I laughed, short and bitter. "No, it was secret. Now it's truth. And the difference is what separates me from you." She screamed then, actually screamed, hands clenched. "You think you're better than me? You think being cold and perfect makes you a man?" "No," I said, stepping forward, voice low but lethal. "Being honest. Being loyal. Being the one who carried this marriage while you fed it to another man piece by piece. That's what makes me a man." Her voice cracked. "You were never there for me. You sat in your office and typed spreadsheets while I was drowning." "You weren't drowning," I shot back. "You were diving headfirst into another life and blaming me for not standing on the shore with a towel." People started filming. I saw at least 3 phones up. Her cousin whispered something and backed away. Her boss, yes, her former boss, was there too, invited as a family friend, and his face told me he'd read the email. "Stop it, Martin," she shrieked. "You're humiliating me." "You humiliated yourself," I said. "You just didn't think the spotlight would ever turn around." Her mother started crying. Her father looked like someone had hit him with a shovel. And then, as if summoned by every bad decision she ever made, Mark showed up at the gate. He didn't come in. Just stood there, watching. Maybe he'd heard. Maybe someone texted. Either way, when she saw him, her body jolted like she'd seen a ghost. "Mark," she breathed. Tell them it wasn't like this." He turned around and walked away. Didn't even wave. The final nail. She turned to me, broken now, mascara streaked, hair wild, breath ragged. "What do you want from me?" she pleaded. "To hurt me? Congratulations, you've done it." I leaned in, so close she had to hear every word. "No, Karen, I don't want to hurt you. I want you to live in this. Every day. Every fake smile, every awkward silence, every relationship you'll never repair. That's your new home." Then I stepped back, adjusted my jacket, and walked through the crowd as it parted like water. No applause. No applause needed. Just the weight of the truth following me out, while she stood trembling in a dress that no longer fit the story she told herself. 3 months later, she was gone, not dead, not disappeared, just erased from the life she once built with the same arrogance she wore like perfume. The fallout was slow, then sudden. Her company restructured, citing internal concerns about ethics and vendor relations. Her name was scrubbed from the staff directory, her office cleared out quietly over a weekend. Friends stopped answering her messages. Group chats went silent. Social media turned cold, likes disappeared, photos untagged, posts unanswered. Raylene blocked her. Her cousin removed every photo that included her from family albums. Even her own mother asked her not to come around for a while. At the grocery store, people she once waved across the aisle without making eye contact. At church, the pew she used to claim sat empty, and when she did try to come back once, she found herself politely uninvited by 3 different elders. Mark, of course, vanished the second the lights got hot. He sent one text, short and surgical. "This got too messy." She responded with paragraph after paragraph, begging, explaining, rationalizing, until finally his number turned green and silent. She moved to a small rental outside the next town over, one of those nameless neighborhoods where no one asks questions and no one cares why you're there. She took a job answering phones at a medical supply warehouse, wearing slacks and a lanyard and pretending she wasn't once the polished wife of a respected consultant. Then, one Saturday morning, she showed up at my door. I knew she would eventually. She looked thinner, smaller somehow, like a child caught in the wrong timeline. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared, fingers trembling. She clutched a letter, handwritten, folded perfectly, like the neatness might cancel the chaos behind it. I opened the door and didn't say a word. She didn't ask to come in. She just stood there and said, "I ruined everything." "I see that now. I thought I needed more, but I was the one who wasn't enough. I've lost my job. My friends won't speak to me. My own mother said she's ashamed of me. And you. I lost you before I even realized you were the only person who ever truly saw me. I would give anything, anything to go back, to fix it, to be yours again. Please, Martin, please say something. I looked at her, at the woman who once shared my bed, my name, my future, and all I saw was absence. An echo of a person who'd made one choice too many to come back from. My voice was low, even. You weren't just unfaithful. You were strategic about it. You weren't lost. You were deliberate. And now you're just late. Her lip quivered. She tried to hand me the letter. I didn't take it. I didn't need to. The damage was written all over her. I stepped back, slowly, and said one last thing before I shut the door. The woman I loved died. You just happened to look like her. Then I closed the door, and the silence that followed was the cleanest sound I'd heard in years. Thank you for listening to my story. It means more than you know. Tell me, where are you listening from? And did it hit the mark?